Welcome to this podcast from the Unitarian Universalist Church of Reading, Massachusetts. I'm Reverend Tim Kutzmark, the minister of this regional church serving communities north of Boston. We are an intentionally inclusive congregation, welcoming people of all ages, beliefs, religious backgrounds, cultural origins, differing abilities, and sexual orientations. If you are in the area, know that you are invited to join us for Sunday services. For more information on our church or on Unitarian Universalism, please visit our website at www.uureading.org. That's www.uureading.org. And now, please enjoy this podcast of the sermon.
The rooms are all empty now. Emptied of memories, emptied of photo albums filled with snapshots of long ago childhood, high school, of honeymoon. Photos that change through time from black and white to Kodak color and now to digital printouts. The rooms are all empty now. Emptied of the family china his mother had chosen over a century ago. Emptied of the large glass china cabinet that none of the kids had room for, auctioned off to some stranger for $75. The rooms are all empty now. Emptied of the flat screen TV on which he watched his John Wayne westerns. Emptied of his fishing tackle and toolbox. Emptied of file cabinets once filled with financials. The rooms are all empty now. Emptied of the bed in which my father died just 40 days ago on September 27th at 6:30 p.m. 2 weekends ago, I completed the inevitable clearing out of my dad's condominium in Sewickley, Pennsylvania. It was a rather complex project, as Dad had documented his life with alarming specificity, from his baptismal certificate from Guardian Angels Church to his 6th grade report card from St. Martin's Catholic School, from his Langley High School basketball letter to the army jacket he wore at age 19 in post-World War II Japan. He saved it all, on and on and on through 83 years of loving, on and on through 83 years of living. I lovingly kept highlights, packing them into boxes to ship up to Boston. I guiltily placed much more into garbage bags. Everything is impermanent, the wise ones tell us. And change is often hard. So very hard, isn't it? This morning, I'd like to use my dad's life and his death to explore how we can survive, know how we can thrive while everything keeps changing. First, let me introduce him to you. His name was George Frank Kutzmark, born in 1928 into a second-generation Polish immigrant family in the Elliott section of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The only child of Francis Sanyak and Frank Kutzmark is actually born bearing a different name. Named George, his maternal uncle's name, and Frank, the name of his own father, my dad's last name should have been the wonderful Polish name Kutzmark. That is the name on his birth certificate, George Frank Kutzmark. but that last name was changed to the more dramatic Kutzmark after a family member hit a factory foreman with a shovel during a fight, knocking him down a flight of stairs. In order for the Kutzmark clan to continue working in the tight-knit community of Pittsburgh's factories and steel mills, they needed to pass as someone else. Hence, a new name, Kutzmark. Like most of us, my dad lived through a myriad of changing identities as he grew from childhood to adulthood to his elder years. Like most of us, he played many parts, filled many roles. First, he was a longed-for, beloved baby, spoiled rotten, the first child born into his large extended family. Then, he was Georgie, the blonde-haired tyke who played in the backyard with his black little dog, Lucky. A few years more, and he was the plucky, tough guy who ran with a pack of neighborhood hellions armed with slingshots, a mean streak, and boyish bravado. He was choir boy at St. Martin's Elementary School, skinny basketball star at Langley High School, fearless football player who, with his best friend Ed Hurley, once hung a kid upside down by his ankles out a second-story window just for the fun of it. He was valedictorian of his high school senior class, then proud member of the 71st Signal Service Battalion Far East Command, a code breaker in Japan. Thanks to the GI Bill, he was the first person in his family to go to college, then earning an MBA from the University of Pittsburgh. He was fiancé to Mary Joanne Jacobs, a sparkling young beauty from the better side of town. My dad was husband, industrial engineer, general manager, executive vice president of a steel company, father, failed fisherman. I always caught more fish than he did. Domestic and international traveler with trips from San Francisco to Sarasota, from Stone Mountain, Georgia to Mount Washington, New Hampshire, from Montreal to Vienna to Berlin to Amsterdam, and finally, last summer, to his ancestral towns of Wilczyn and Poznan in Poland. My dad was a cancer survivor, devoted caregiver to his wife of 57 years as she was dying. He was grieving widower, proud Grandpa K to his grandson John Copernicus, and then special friend to a wonderful woman by the name of Dottie Dart. At the end of this September, he experienced his final change, passing forever into the mysteries of death. Shortly before he made that crossing, I asked Dad how he managed to live so fully and remain so centered through so many shifts over so many years. As one who tends to be buffeted by change, I wanted to know his secret to thriving. In answer to that question, Dad shared 4 things he believed were key to staying balanced and grounded in the midst of impermanence. First, he said, we must understand where we come from. My dad said, you can't keep your center, you can't hope to hold your balance if you don't understand your roots. Who we are and the choices we make grow out of where we come from. We need to understand how our past has shaped the way we approach the present. With self-awareness, we can face the changing future with firmer footing. Take my dad, for instance. He was a product of his times, part of the greatest generation. Born on July 1st, 1928, his self-perception and his worldview were shaped first by the Great Depression that shook the nation a year after he was born, and then by World War II. He was 13 years old when the attack on Pearl Harbor brought the U.S. into the war. But it goes deeper than that. Dad was born poor into a barely educated family. My dad's father had only a sixth grade education, thrown out into the street by his stepmother after his own father died. My dad's father, my Grandpa Kay, lived as a kid for months in abandoned buildings and railroad cars. Later, my dad grew up watching his father, a World War I veteran, doing back-breaking work at the McKinney Hinge plant in Pittsburgh. Dad saw hard-working and sometimes hard-drinking relatives struggling to make ends meet. He came of age steeped in the scarcity and sacrifice of the Depression. He was seasoned by the combative quality of a world at war. The west end of Pittsburgh, where he grew up, also had a toughness and a roughness about it in its people and its living. And Pittsburgh herself, with skies darkened by the smoke of her mills, was a gritty steel town. Tough struggle was a fact of life for my dad and his family. And because of this, his father pushed him, and I mean pushed him hard, to get educated, to lift himself up, to be a financial and professional success. All of these factors formed in my dad a worldview that made him strong, steely, driving, purposeful, often demanding, frequently harsh, hard, conservative, competitive, quick to assess, swift to judge, not at all shy in stepping where he wanted to go, not at all reluctant to voice his opinions, and with his two sons, not at all adverse to using the flat of his hand or the force of his fist to make a point. But his early years also shaped him into a man who was generous, kind, ready to sacrifice anything and everything for others, fun-loving, good, highly educated, intelligent, astute, politically aware, principled, practical, a member of Mensa, loyal to friends, dedicated to family, devoted to his children, fast to lend a hand, a leader, a listener, and a lifelong learner. In order to thrive amidst a changing world, we need to know how we came to be who we are today, why we came to be who we are today, and how that helps us and hinders us as we move toward the future. But even as we and others come to understand the impact of our past, we need to be strongly rooted in the present. My dad believed that family provided that essential foundation. For my dad, family was the second key to thriving during change. Dad grew up living in the same home as his grandmother Catherine, who spoke only Polish, amidst great-grandparents, aunts, and uncles and cousins who were connected. It was a time when families stayed together in the same neighborhood, ate the same sauerkraut and gołąbki and pierogies, and although they didn't necessarily like each other most of the time, they looked out for each other all of the time. This family focus remained as my dad raised his own family. Our home was filled with aunts and uncles and grandmothers and grandfathers. Even if Dad didn't see eye to eye with them, they were all family, and it was important to be together. This commitment to family was amplified in his relationship with his kids. Although outspokenly proud of all three of us, not one of us is the child he expected or might have chosen. All of us took some getting used to for him, each in our own way. But although at times he could be fierce in his expectations of us, he was equally fierce in his support of us. When my older brother went through a life-threatening time, Dad was there, always picking up the pieces and doing whatever needed to be done to keep him alive. When any of us was short of cash, a car, a mortgage loan, a computer would be offered. Invitations to join him and Mom on vacations were numerous. Plentiful, too, were the phone calls filled with advice and answers to any number of questions. Some of those answers were solicited. The vast majority were unsolicited. But you know what? Almost all of them were spot on. But the greatest example of what family meant to Dad was seen in his unfailing care of my mom in her final years. Alzheimer's disease, aphasia from stroke, and multiple cancers made a hospice room the only option. Dad was there every day, talking to her, singing with her, watching TV with her, doing crafts with her. My dad doing crafts, feeding her, cheering her, transferring her from bed to wheelchair to toilet. He wiped her and washed her and wept with her. Watching him, I learned what love really means. I will forever respect him for how he treated Mom and how he taught love through example. He proved we thrive when we remain rooted in the good and the bad that family brings. But my dad believed we have to be careful not to root ourselves so strongly that we lose our own ability to change. That's the third thing my dad ultimately came to believe, although it took him a little time. He realized that he needed to cultivate his capacity to change. We all need to cultivate our capacity to change. When I was younger, I saw Dad as a strong, unchangeable marble monolith. But as he aged, something happened. His ever-present practicality helped him realize that the way to find peace in his life, the way to be able to enjoy the gift of his life, was to let go of what he needed things to be, to let go of what he wanted things to be. He learned to soften his expectations, allowing himself to reshape his thinking. He realized that there were great things to be found here, as they are, with people as they are. He could be more fully in his skin if he allowed others to be in theirs. His expectations of his children relaxed. His relationships with friends took on a quality of acceptance. His social and religious views began to broaden. His political perspective began shifting a bit more to the left. Dad even claimed he was seriously thinking about voting for Barack Obama in the next election. I have to admit, I wish he had lived longer just so I could have witnessed that. My dad learned how to change. We should all be so lucky. The good luck or bad luck cannot determine the extent to which we embrace our life. This, according to Dad, is the fourth and final key to thriving when everything else keeps changing. Savor the gift of life, no matter what it looks like. Dad believed that no matter what the condition or situation, we could find a way to fully live the life we have been given, no matter how compromised it might be. He knew the secret of health for both mind and body is not to mourn for the past nor worry about the future, but to live the present moment wisely and earnestly and enthusiastically. After my mom died in 2008, he could have rolled over and died as well. It never crossed his mind. At age 80, he packed up his home and moved into a vibrant senior living community. Soon, he was serving on committees, arguing with the management about how they should negotiate with the electric company for better utility rates, and advising the director of food and beverages as to what was needed to change to make the four-star dining room even better. In short, he was trying to run the place. He loved it, and his neighbors loved him. The resident council was pushing for Dad to become president. Dad was living. And Dad was dying. He had battled a rare blood disease for 6 years, kept alive through experimental medication and multiple blood transfusions, over 70-plus transfusions. Dad wanted to live longer. He wanted to live to Thanksgiving, to have one last holiday dinner with his entire family. He wanted to live because he was genuinely a happy man. He lived because he wanted to live to see his grandson grow to become a bit older. But most of all, he wanted to live because when he least expected it, he found a special friend, a soulmate, with whom he could spar intellectually, travel, ride in a biplane, talk, play Scrabble, do crossword puzzles, get beaten by at pool and Wii boxing, hike, eat, and learn. This special friend, this wonderful, amazing woman named Dottie Dart, was the most amazing gift to my dad. She brought him great joy. And in the last weeks, she gave him a reason to grab that walker and keep moving to the next transfusion, even when he was so very, very sick. This is the truth my dad discovered. Don't give up on life, because life, even when it is ebbing, won't give up on you. When we least expect it, we can find the soulmate who completes us. Or we can find moments of miracle, bits of beauty, people and things that stir us and move us and delight us and enliven us and transform us and, yes, change us. We can thrive while everything is changing. We can thrive while our own health is fading. We can live while we are dying. My dad proved that again and again and again. Even while platelets dripped into his veins in a last-ditch effort to keep him alive for a few more days, he kept his mind nimble with Sudoku. He flirted with the nurses. He held the hand of his beloved, and he enjoyed a hot turkey sandwich and a cold cup of ice cream. The last time I saw my dad was the weekend before he died. His rooms were still full of furniture and photos and family china. He was sitting in the living room watching a John Wayne Western on his flat-screen TV. "John Wayne is great," he exclaimed. "Westerns, I could watch them forever." I wish he could have watched them forever. I gathered my overnight bag and moved to the door. "I'm going to order a blue sweater from LL Bean," he suddenly said. "Dottie told me I look good in blue. She said it makes my eyes sparkle. I'll wear it on Thanksgiving." Death may have been waiting, but Dad was still full of life. George Frank Kutzmark was still thriving while everything else